Poor girl is forgotten when hitchhiking, until millionaire pulls over and says, "I'll take you." And where he takes her changes everything. The entire school had already left. The empty parking lot echoed with the sound of the cold wind cutting through the afternoon as Emily, her notebook clutched to her chest and her eyes brimming with tears, stared at the sidewalk. Her mother had forgotten, again, and her broken cell phone wasn't helping. Around her, the smiles of rich girls echoed like, "Arrows, no one wants to pick you up, right, weirdo?" One of them even threw a milkshake container at her feet. Emily bent down, cleaning the floor without saying a word, feeling the humiliation coursing through her veins. That's when a shiny black SUV with tinted windows pulled up alongside. The window slowly rolled down, revealing the cold, curious face of Logan Hayes, the town's most arrogant heir. "Are you going to stand there until tonight?" he asked sarcastically. Emily didn't answer. He rolled his eyes and muttered, "Hurry up, I'll drive you, but don't think it's charity." And it was there in the disconcerting silence of that invitation that everything began to change. Forever. What Logan didn't know was that Emily wasn't just the poor forgotten girl from school. Behind the torn backpack and recycled thrift store clothes lurked a girl with a buried last name, and a past Logan's parents did everything they could to erase. The house he took her to, in a strange burst of curiosity, was the exact spot where decades earlier his own father had destroyed Emily's family with a billion-dollar fraud. What seemed like a simple, impulsive gesture from a bored rich kid would become the beginning of an emotional whirlwind that would unearth secrets, tear apart masks, and show that true power doesn't always lie with those with money, but with those who know the truth. Before continuing, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and like this video so you can continue receiving our real stories. Thank you very much. The Ravencrest High School campus was a silent stage of inequality masquerading as normality. The hallways gleamed with imported sneakers, designer backpacks, and loud voices talking about dinners on yachts and vacations in Switzerland. Their status was invisible and absolute. You didn't need to show your worth. It was enough how you walked, who you walked with, and most importantly, who picked you up at the end of the day. And it was in this theater of appearances that Emily Collins always went unnoticed. Brown hair tied in a makeshift bun, worn jeans and a patched backpack that seemed to weigh her down more than anything else. She always sat in the back of the room, wrote everything down, answered when called, and disappeared at the traffic light. It was as if her existence was uncomfortable because it was so silent, and, for that very reason, she became an easy target for the mockery of those who needed to prove something. Logan Hayes was the complete opposite. Son of Charles Hayes, the tycoon who financed half the town, he walked as if the ground belonged to him, blonde, elegant, with a cynical smile that won over girls and irritated teachers. He didn't care about grades. What mattered was his image, his unattainable aura, and in a way everyone there wanted to be him, or at the very least, to be noticed by him. He was the kind of boy who could destroy anyone with a well-placed joke, and Emily knew it. On that particular day, a grey Friday afternoon, Emily waited in front of the school gates as usual, her gaze fixed on the closing gate, trying to hide the lump in her throat. It was already routine for her mother to forget. But that day, something different hung in the air. The girls from Logan's group, all with their expensive clothes and venomous smiles, were nearby. One of them, Claire, made a low, cruel comment. "I wonder if she's waiting for the cleaning bus." Laughter. Emily pretended not to hear. But Logan heard, and laughed. Not loudly, just the corner of his mouth, enough to hurt. For some reason he didn't understand. Logan didn't get out. He stood beside the car, watching the girl alone, motionless, her eyes empty. There was something about that silence that bothered him, a kind of invisible resistance, like someone who's learned that fighting back gives the aggressor more power. He narrowed his eyes, and on an impulse that contradicted everything he'd built into his social image, unlocked the car and approached it. "Get in," he said, as if offering a dismissive Uber ride. Emily didn't move. "Are you scared? I don't bite." She stared at him for a second. Then she got in, silently, as if accepting her fate, but not the company. The drive so far had been strange. The radio was playing something instrumental, and Logan was driving without speaking. Emily was too, but his gaze was fixed on the windshield, watching the streets pass by as if searching for a memory. The next thing he knew, he was entering an older part of the city, an area he would never set foot in voluntarily. But it was as if her presence beside him was steering the wheel, as if an invisible force were dictating the route. And then, as he rounded the last corner, he stopped in front of an old house with broken windows and peeling paint. Emily got out without a word. She walked to the gate. She stood still. Logan got out, intrigued. "Do you know this place?" he asked. She turned slowly, her eyes now holding something new. "Wait. I was born here," she replied. And she looked back at him. It was the first time he'd truly seen her, and he didn't like what he felt. The house before them was more than rotting wood and faded memories. It was an open tomb. Emily stared at the sunken porch, as if expecting the door to open at any moment and her forgotten childhood to call her name again. But the silence was absolute. Logan remained standing, leaning against the car, arms crossed, trying to understand why he felt uncomfortable. It was just an old house, it was just a quiet girl, but there was something about the atmosphere that seemed to tap into a place he had never accessed within himself. Emily took a deep breath. "My dad used to sit there on those steps every Sunday after church. He'd tell stories about his days as an engineer. He'd say one day he'd build a building with his name on it in downtown Manhattan." She smiled, a tired smile, the kind that only exists after hope dies. "He believed it so strongly that for a while I did too." Logan lowered his eyes, embarrassed, but she continued. "Until one day, he disappeared. Just like that, out of nowhere. They said he'd run away, that he'd embezzled money from the company he worked for, that he'd brought shame to the city, and we were erased out of nowhere, as if we'd never existed." She took a few steps forward, stepping carefully on the cracked floor. "My mom went crazy. She stopped working. She drank secretly, and apologized while she beat me for looking like him. I was 8 years old. I learned to do laundry, cook, and hide bruises with drugstore makeup." Logan felt his stomach churn, but it wasn't pity. It was something worse, guilt, and he still didn't know why. "When we finally got out of here, we holed up in a tiny apartment. My mother stopped talking on my 12th birthday, literally. She never called me by my name again. She became a zombie. And I learned to keep quiet, because every time I spoke, someone remembered that I was the thief's daughter, that my existence was a reminder of shame. So I disappeared, until I became this thing that no one sees at school." She turned to Logan, her eyes fixed. "But you saw it, even if it was just to laugh." He didn't answer. He wanted to, but he couldn't. And for the first time in his life, Logan felt small. He felt ridiculous in his own luxury. Emily looked back at the house. "My father didn't run away, Logan. He was destroyed, and I spent my life being what was left of him." The silence between them was thick as fog, and in that charged pause, something invisible snapped. Emily turned and walked back to the car. "You brought me here, but you have no idea what it means." Logan just followed her without saying a word, because she was right. The following Monday arrived like a slap. For Emily, everything was back to normal. Fake smiles, glances that pierced her body as if she were invisible, and the same spot, at the back of the classroom. But for Logan, there was something different. He couldn't stop looking at her. Not like before, with disdain or sarcasm. Now there was an unease, a doubt he hated to admit. He was thinking about her, thinking too much. But he didn't know how to deal with it, and as always, he solved the discomfort with the old trick of wounded pride, making a bet. At lunch, sitting with his 3 faithful companions, Tyler, Matt, and Blake, Logan struck up a conversation, feigning boredom. "Dude, did you guys see Emily yesterday? That girl is a mystery. I think there's a curse around her." The boys laughed. "The curse is what she wears," Matt commented. "That girl looks like a glitch in the school system." Logan let out a dry laugh and then, without thinking much, blurted out, "Want to see some magic? I'll give her 2 weeks to make me fall in love. Like for real." The others looked at each other. "You? With that freak?" Tyler scoffed. "Even you wouldn't stoop that low." Logan raised an eyebrow. "And that's why it'll be easy. No one's ever looked at her. I look, smile, show a little interest, and she'll fall. I make her believe she's special. And then, well, then we'll see what's left of her." The table erupted in laughter. It was disgusting. But within that group, the crueler you were, the more applause you earned. The plan began that very afternoon. Logan approached Emily in the science lab and asked to be paired with her. She hesitated, but accepted. And he, with the mastery of a seasoned actor, pretended to be enchanted by her every answer. "You're brilliant, you know that," he blurted out in the middle of an explanation about chemical reactions. Emily frowned. She didn't understand. Was he mocking? But his gaze didn't seem mocking, it seemed interested. In the following days, he began following her through the halls. He sat next to her in the library. He left funny notes on her locker. The whole school began to notice. And, as expected, rumors began to spread like wildfire. "Logan and the weirdo," the girls would say, giggling and rolling their eyes, "must be some kind of bet." But no one dared confront him. After all, he was untouchable. Emily, for her part, began to slowly disarm. It was impossible not to notice his gentle gestures, the way he seemed genuinely interested in what she was reading, what she was thinking, what she was feeling. For the first time in years, she felt seen, important, special, until the invitation came. "There's a party at my ranch. You should go," Logan said casually at the end of English class. Emily's eyes widened. "Me? At your party?" He smiled. "Sure. I want to show you that you can belong." She didn't know it, but that sentence was poisoned with a taste of hope, because the party would be the stage for her downfall. The sky was wine-colored when Emily stepped off the bus with unsteady steps. The Hayes Ranch address was on the outskirts of town, a property so vast it seemed like a universe unto itself. She wore a navy blue dress borrowed from her neighbor, simple but clean. Her hair was down for the first time in years. In the mirror before leaving, she'd seen something new in her reflection, a shy flicker of anticipation. Maybe it was true. Maybe Logan saw something in her that others didn't. Maybe. At the ranch's entrance, a security guard looked at her strangely, but quickly made way. The music was loud, and colored lights danced over the illuminated pool like something out of a pop video. Beautiful people were everywhere, loud laughter, expensive drinks flowing in crystal glasses. Emily felt like a missing piece on an expensive chessboard, but still, she walked firmly to the balcony. She was there by invitation. She owed no one anything. That's when Logan saw her. He was talking to Claire and 2 other boys when his eyes met hers, and for a moment, he froze. She was beautiful. Not in the traditional sense, but in something rarer. There was dignity about her, a serenity none of the girls around him would ever possess. He approached. He smiled. "You came." Emily smiled back. "You invited me." He offered her a soda and led her to a more secluded part of the house, where the guests weren't paying as much attention. There they sat on a wooden bench beneath a tree decorated with strung lights. The distance from the music created a bubble of comfortable silence. "Why did you invite me?" Emily asked bluntly. Logan hesitated, then answered with practiced calm. "Because you're different. I don't know, maybe I'm just tired of everything else." She arched an eyebrow. "Tired of girls who adore you?" He laughed. "Tired of pretending to like it?" Emily looked around. "This place isn't for me." Logan turned to her, serious now. "Maybe it is. They just haven't told you that yet." Emily looked away. That sentence echoed too deeply. And he noticed. He touched her arm lightly. She didn't flinch. A second of silence. A second of held breath. And then he said, "Come with me, I want to show you something." They walked to the barn. Inside, away from everything, Logan pulled out a wooden ladder and climbed it to the hayloft. The lights up there were dim, the smell was rustic, and the world seemed far away. They sat side by side. "You know," Logan began, looking up at the ceiling, "I've never met anyone like you. You carry something solid, like you've been through wars we can't even dream of." Emily just watched him, with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. Was this really happening, or was it a dream? He turned, staring at her closely. "You're strong, and that's scary, because I never was." Emily felt her stomach churn. This wasn't the Logan everyone knew, or maybe it was, finally being real. And then he moved closer. Another second. His eyes closing, his lips a breath away. But Emily looked away. "Sorry. No, not yet." Logan backed away immediately. "It's okay." And for the first time, he respected someone's boundaries. The night ended there, with the two of them in silence sitting among the hay and the void. And Emily left with a restless heart, unaware that this wasn't the beginning of something good, but the harbinger of pain. Monday arrived with overcast skies and a whiff of storm in the air, as if the universe foresaw what was to come. Emily walked the school hallways with measured steps, but there was something different in her expression, a restrained glow, a hint of hope. Over the past few days, Logan had shown himself to be someone she never imagined existed behind that arrogant veneer. He kept approaching her during breaks, sharing food with her on the back steps, and asking questions about her favorite books. Emily, for the first time in years, allowed herself to smile inside. But while she smiled invisibly, the rest of the school whispered intensely. And it was on a muggy Thursday afternoon, in the central courtyard, that everything came crashing down. Claire was organizing a game called Surprise Confession, a microphone connected to the school's speakers, where everyone could step up and ask indiscreet questions or reveal secrets, all under the guise of just a game. Logan was there, surrounded by people. Emily was passing by when he spotted her and beckoned her over with a gesture. "Come here, Emily, you have to join in." She hesitated, but the voices around her urged her on. "Go on, Emily. Say something." Logan gently tugged at her hand and led her to the center of the courtyard. The microphone was placed in her hand. Everyone watched, laughed, waited. Emily felt her face heat up, her heart racing. I have nothing to say," she murmured. Claire laughed out loud. "Oh, come on. Just say you're in love with Logan. Everyone already knows." Laughter, lots. Emily tried to hand the microphone back, but Logan snatched it back with a cynical smile she didn't recognize. "You want to know a secret," he said, his voice amplified, and his eyes fixed on her. "Emily is part of a social experiment of mine." Laughter. Claire guffawed. "Seriously," Logan continued, as if telling a joke. "The idea was simple, to prove that anyone, even the most oblivious person in school, can feel special with the right words." The courtyard erupted in laughter. Emily froze. "But look, it actually worked. She came to my party, climbed up into the barn with me, almost kissed me." The silence fell like a blow. Logan realized the weight of the words too late. But Claire pounced. You almost kissed her?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't cry. She just stared at Logan, her eyes fixed without a tear. Her face was so calm, almost serene, as if something inside had broken so deeply it no longer even hurt. She gently handed the microphone back to him. "Thank you for showing who you really are." And she turned, walking away amidst laughter, shoving, and cell phones filming. Logan tried to follow, but he couldn't. It was as if he'd been immobilized by his own shame. For the next few days, Emily didn't show up at school. She didn't respond to messages. She didn't give any sign. And Logan began to feel a silence that consumed him more than any humiliation could. For the first time, he was on someone's outside. And that side hurt. 3 days of absence. It was enough for the school to forget the scandal, but not for Logan. The image of Emily's face standing before him in the courtyard replayed like a nightmare. The coldness in her eyes, the restrained pain, the last Sentence spoken without raising its tone. He tried to follow his routine, laughed with his friends, pretended not to care. But something had changed. What had once been entertainment now tasted like blood in his mouth. The mockery lost its flavor, and her absence began to echo in every corner where, for some reason, he expected to find her. On Friday afternoon, as he was leaving school, Logan spotted a figure sitting alone on a park bench next to the public library. It was her. Her hair was tied. Back her jeans were faded, and her headphones were dangling from her lap. His heart raced. He approached slowly as if treading on landmines. "Emily." She didn't turn around. "I thought you weren't leaving center stage." Logan swallowed. He sat down beside her uninvited. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Emily finally looked at him. "But you did. And worse, you did it for applause." He fell silent. There was no denying it. She dropped her gaze to the floor. "But you know what hurt the most?" He shook his head, mute. "Was that I knew, from the beginning." Logan's eyes widened. "What?" Emily took a deep breath, her voice firm. "I heard it, in the library, you betting with your friends that you could make anyone fall in love with you, that I was the perfect guinea pig." The world around them seemed to freeze. Logan held his breath. "And yet, even knowing that, I went." She looked at him with a frightening calm. "Not because I'm stupid, but because I needed to see how far you'd go. Wanted to know if there was anything human in the golden boy everyone adored." The silence between them grew awkward. Logan tried to speak, but she held up her hand, silencing him. "You're not a monster, Logan. Monsters know what they're doing. You don't. You're worse, you're empty. An echo of what you were told you should be." Logan closed his eyes, as if the words had cut deeper than he could bear. Emily stood. "But I thank you. I truly do. You helped me bury the last of my hope in something that never existed." He tried to grab her arm, but she gently pulled away. "Don't touch me." She took a few steps and then turned for the last time. "You never fooled me, Logan. I just let you believe it. And now, this is all you have left." And she was gone, leaving behind a silent boy on a cold bench, surrounded by a silence that for the first time he understood. The silence of being seen, and yet being worthless. Saturday dawned with the weight of an emotional hangover. Logan spent the morning locked in his room, scrolling through old photos on his phone, rereading messages that should never have been written. Emily's face appeared in every unanswered notification, in every silence between heartbeats. Her words wouldn't leave his mind. "You never fooled me, Logan." But what gnawed at him most was the feeling that he still didn't know who she really was. He knew nothing, and that bothered him more than the shame. He then decided to dig. For the first time, not out of idle curiosity, but out of necessity. He sensed something much bigger lurking behind that girl with her light steps and firm voice. He grabbed his laptop and typed her full name, Emily Collins. Some old articles surfaced, small notes from almost 10 years ago. Engineer accused of fraud mysteriously disappears. Family expelled from town after financial scandal. The father's name appeared, Jonathan Collins. Logan frowned. That sounded all too familiar. He opened his father's closet, where he kept boxes of old documents, newspaper clippings, magazines from the days when Charles Hayes still cared about his image. He rummaged through them for nearly an hour until he found a laminated edition of Fortune with her father smiling alongside 3 other partners. One of them was Jonathan Collins. Logan froze. The name, the face, the subject matter, it all matched. There was the truth. Emily's father had been his own father's partner. The article discussed a social housing investment project, a multi-million-dollar fund aimed at revitalizing degraded urban areas. The text praised the initiative's transparency, but Logan knew that the facade hid one of the company's dirtiest dealings. He had overheard hushed conversations as a child. He knew something had gone wrong. He knew one of the partners had been dismissed, but he never learned his name. He connected the dots with a bitter taste in his mouth. His father had used Jonathan as a scapegoat. He framed him, vanished the funds, and made it look like Collins had absconded with the money. The man he'd grown up hearing called the traitor was, in fact, the victim, and his daughter, the girl he'd humiliated in front of everyone, carried the weight of a crime that was never her father's fault. Logan jumped to his feet as if the ground were burning. Everything was spinning. Emily's face, her calm, her restrained pain, her intelligence. It all made sense now. She knew. She always knew. And yet she let him get close. She let him touch the past. And he, blinded by vanity, destroyed it again. The feeling of self-loathing was greater than any emotion he had ever felt. For the first time, Logan understood what true failure was. Not losing a game, but never understanding that he was being tested all the time. And he failed. On Monday, Emily's seat in the classroom was empty. The bench, clean and tidy, with its books stacked high, looked like a tombstone. During roll call, her name was called, and silence responded. Logan didn't look up, but each letter of that name weighed like a stone on his chest. During recess, he searched the hallway. Nothing. He tried the library. No one. He went down to the back stairs, where they had so often shared snacks and glances. It was empty. For the first time, her absence was loud. That night, she tried texting. No answer. She called. Voicemail. She decided to go to the small apartment she shared with her mother. She rang the doorbell and waited. The door opened a few seconds. Later, a woman with a lost look, pale skin, and an absent expression appeared. It was her mother. Logan introduced himself, but she didn't seem to hear him. She simply murmured, "She's not here anymore. She left. Said she needed to breathe," and closed the door. Logan stood there for a long time, staring at the cold wood. The words echoed, went away, and with them, a void that no party, luxury car, or bank account could fill. The next few days were a blur. Logan started going to the places she used to go. He'd sit on park benches, wait in the library. He abandoned his friends who laughed and didn't understand. "Are you obsessed with that crazy woman?" they'd say. But he couldn't laugh. Nothing was funny anymore. The nights were worse. He replayed their conversations, remembered her voice, the way she spoke the truth without having to shout. Her absence became a constant presence. It was everywhere, and precisely because of that, it hurt so much. At first, Logan just wanted to make amends. But now he just wanted her back. One afternoon, he found a manila envelope in the school trash can with his name handwritten on it. His heart raced. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper. A letter. Short, to the point. "Logan, forgiving you would be punishing me twice. The first was trust. The second would be teaching you that regret washes away the consequences. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to remember. And..." He held the paper with trembling hands. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He simply understood. She was gone, but she had left her pain as a legacy, and it was his, forever. The days began to drag on, without Emily, without direction, without ground. But the true abyss opened when local newspapers began reporting a new scandal involving Hayes & Co. This time, it wasn't just rumors. Documents had been leaked. Falsified contracts, overbilling, embezzlement of public funds for projects that never came to fruition. And at the center of it all, Charles Hayes, Logan's father. Within hours, the surname that had opened doors for decades became a curse. Police surrounded the company building. His father was seen being led away in handcuffs, with flashbulbs popping everywhere. The stock plummeted. His assets were frozen. His once sycophantic friends evaporated like smoke. And Logan, until then shielded by the bubble of privilege, felt his world collapse. At school, looks changed. Whispers cut through the hallways like knives. I knew the mask would slip eventually. The father is a criminal, the son couldn't be any different. Even the teachers began treating him with the cold distance of distrust. Claire, who had always surrounded him like cheap perfume, ignored him. Matt and Tyler laughed at him in the cafeteria, and for the first time Logan ate alone. But the worst part wasn't the stairs. It was walking into the principal's office and hearing what no one thought to say politely: his enrollment was suspended. Until further notice. Avoid disturbances, they said. The school needs to protect its reputation. Irony. The same institution that had flattered his father was now kicking him out just as easily. At home, the immense rooms felt like caves. His mother was locked in her room. His father was in prison. The servants had all been dismissed. Logan wandered from room to room like a ghost who had finally realized he had always been invisible to his own parents. There were no hugs. There were no explanations. Only silence and shame. One afternoon, as he walked out of a pharmacy with his shoulders hunched, he heard a group of teenagers whispering. A girl pointed at him with her chin. That's him. The boy who destroyed that girl. The same one who grew up surrounded by lies. Logan lowered his eyes. He didn't try to defend himself, because it was true. The whole town seemed to see in him what Emily had seen all along. A hollow boy, whose shine was only borrowed from others. The gold that once surrounded him was now rust, and all that remained was a dirty name, and the echo of a girl who had left silently. The house grew increasingly silent, as if it was slowly dying. The cold marble floor, once a symbol of prestige, now ached under Logan's bare feet. The family portraits, once a proud sight, had been removed from the walls. The press circled the gates like vultures, and the few people who still called him by name did so out of obligation or morbid curiosity. Logan didn't go out. He didn't eat. He slept little. He spent hours in the attic where he found boxes of old company files, including folders bearing his name, Jonathan Collinson's stamped letters. He read everything, every report, every contract, every cruel manipulation his father had committed. And among the documents was an unsent letter, written by Jonathan, addressed to Charles. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. You called me brother. You made me believe in the project. I invested everything, Charles. Everything. You didn't just betray me, you killed my family. They'll never recover from this. And my daughter will grow up thinking her father is a thief. Logan couldn't hold back his tears. A silent, shameful, dry cry. It was as if every word in the letter burned his skin from the inside out. For the first time, he wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for her, for Emily, for the girl he thought he could manipulate like a social object, for the girl who carried a pain he'd never had the courage to truly hear. That's when it started to change. With no money, no prestige, no influence, Logan found a simple job in a small city bookstore, hidden among old cafes. He started organizing shelves. Then he began recommending books. He read at night, wrote thoughts on loose-leaf paper, recited poems to no one. He discovered that solitude could be fertile when you stopped resisting it. He helped his elderly neighbor carry groceries. He fed the stray cats. No one recognized the golden boy from school, and he liked it. One day, as he passed the public library, he saw a girl sitting on the bench where he usually met Emily. It wasn't her, but the gesture, her eyes lowered, her headphones on her lap, her books on her knees, brought a shiver down his spine. Emily had disappeared, yes, but she had left something behind, a restlessness that transformed him from the inside out. And perhaps that was true forgiveness, not the kind you receive, but the kind you build with silent actions. He began visiting Emily's old house, the one where it all began. He planted flowers in the neglected backyard. He fixed the fence and weeded the garden. No one told him to, no one saw him. But he did it as a way of restoring something worthy to her memory, something clean. Little by little, Logan began to live differently, slower, more attentive. He no longer looked at others as stepping stones. He began to look them in the eye, listen, stop, be. And even without knowing where she was, he carried Emily in everything. In the books he read, in the silences he respected, in the small choices that, day after day, created a new version of himself. Not for her, but for you. Because for the first time, he wanted to be someone worthy of what he lost. Spring arrived, tinging the city with soft colors and fresh winds. The trees lining the main avenue bloomed as if oblivious to the past, as if willing to forgive winter, even if it didn't deserve it. Logan now walked the streets with a simple step. He was recognized by new eyes, no longer as the haze heir, but as the boy in the bookstore who recommended Russian novels and paid for strangers' coffee without saying a word. That particular morning, he was crossing the street with a stack of books in his arms when he heard the sound of a piano coming from the town's old church, a forgotten, nearly abandoned temple that occasionally hosted discreet recitals. He hesitated, stopped. The sound was soft but familiar, like a voice, buried in memory. Something was pulling him. He entered through the side door. The space was empty except for the altar and an upright piano in the corner. The figure seated before him had straight shoulders, light fingers, and hair tied in a simple bun. The world froze. It was her, Emily. She didn't see him right away. She was playing a soft, nostalgic melody, its notes seeming to whisper forgiveness and remembrance. Logan stood still, breathless. This was the first time he'd seen her in months, and everything inside him shattered into silence. When she finally finished, her hands rested on the keys. Then, as if feeling the weight of her gaze, she turned her head. Their meeting of eyes was brief and eternal. She didn't smile, but she didn't stand up either. Logan approached with slow steps, as if walking over the ground where he'd sinned. He stopped a few feet away, his heart hammered in his chest. "I didn't know you played the piano," he said, as if his voice had returned. Just by being near her. Emily looked at him without anger, without tenderness, just presence. "You never asked," he replied. Logan nodded, swallowing hard. "I've been looking everywhere for you." She watched him. "And now you've found me. So what?" The silence stretched. He took a deep breath. "I didn't come to apologize. That would be selfish. I came because, even without knowing if you'll forgive me, I needed to tell you I've changed. Not because of you, but because you forced me to see who I was. And that has never left me." Emily lowered her eyes. The air between them was thick with everything that had never been said. Logan continued unhurriedly. "The house, that house, I took care of it. I don't know if you'll ever want to go back, but the flowers are there, and they have your name on them." She was silent for a few seconds that felt like hours. Then she slowly stood up, adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, and walked toward him. They stood face to face. So close. But between them the past pulsed. She looked up. "You're not the boy I knew anymore, but I still don't know if you're someone I can walk with." He lowered his head. "I understand." And in that instant, with the sound of the wind blowing against the stained glass windows, she lightly touched his hand with her fingers. It wasn't forgiveness, nor an invitation. It was an acknowledgement, as if to say, "I saw." And then she turned and walked toward the church exit without looking back. Logan stood there, still, breathing slowly. He knew this wasn't the end, nor the beginning. It was something new, the reunion not of two bodies, but of two truths. The church reunion reverberated in the following days, like a note suspended in the air, refusing to die. Logan didn't return to work that afternoon. She walked to Emily's old house and sat on the restored porch among the flowers she'd planted weeks before. The wooden bench where her father used to tell stories was now the same one where he sat, silently, waiting for something that might never come. Across town, Emily walked steadily through the library. He'd returned not to pick up where he'd left off, but to close a cycle. Since leaving, he'd dedicated himself to social projects, volunteering as a musician in nursing homes and giving small recitals in neighboring towns. He'd rediscovered the voice that childhood had stolen. Now, back, everything seemed smaller, except for what I'd felt at that reunion. The next afternoon, she walked to the bookstore where she'd learned Logan worked. He wasn't at the counter. She asked. The owner pointed to the inventory. She went. She found him stacking boxes, his sleeves rolled up and his hands dusty. He saw her and stopped. They stared at each other for a few seconds too long. She held an envelope. She held it out. "It's for you." He took it. Emily didn't explain. "Read it when you're alone." And she left, as silently as she'd arrived. It took Logan hours to open it. He was sitting on the same bench where he'd first seen her alone. That afternoon her mother had forgotten. The envelope contained only a single letter, handwritten, calmly, as if choosing each word with intention. "Logan, when I was a child, my father used to say that forgiving was like releasing a large stone from your chest. I didn't understand. After he left, I carried so many stones that I forgot how to breathe. You were one more. But unlike the others, you didn't hide. You saw me, you hurt me, and then you stayed. And staying takes more courage than leaving. I didn't come back for you, I came back for myself, to look into your eyes and know that pain no longer rules me. And for that, yes, I forgive you. But forgiveness is not an invitation, it's liberation. I follow a path that builds me, and I hope you follow yours with the same dignity you've learned to cultivate. May the memory of what we were teach you. With peace, Emily." As he finished reading, Logan closed his eyes. A single tear fell. There was no drama, no scream. It was a calm goodbye, and therefore definitive. Her forgiveness was real, and therefore painful, because it brought no return, but it left something in the air, a trail of beauty, an invisible legacy. He folded the letter, put it away carefully, and smiled. Small, bitter, true. For the first time he understood that losing can be a form of victory, when what you lose is the mask, and what you gain is a new face. In the golden late afternoon, the old wooden house breathed silently in the warm seasonal breeze. The flowers in the garden swayed as if saying yes to time. Inside the yard, Logan watered the plants with slow, almost ceremonial movements. There was no rush, no music, just the sound of leaves touching the world. On the porch, a cup of tea cooled beside an open book. The Old Man and the Sea. A blue ribbon marked the exact page where he'd left off. An empty stool sat before him, the same one where he'd imagined she'd sit again one day. He looked up at the sky. A plane was slowly crossing, like a thin line tracing the horizon. Logan watched in silence, and a faint smile formed. There was no longer any sadness in his eyes, only the soft trace of something that had passed and left peace. At the gate, a young woman she didn't recognize stopped and watched him. "This used to be Emily Collins's house, didn't it?" she asked curiously. Logan nodded sweetly. "It still is, in a way." She smiled and went on her way. The sun was sinking behind the hill, bathing the house in orange light, as if enveloping it in a continuous, eternal and silent farewell. Logan gathered up the hose, turned off the porch light, and went inside, leaving the door ajar. And the wind, as if respecting absence, blew slowly, as if waiting for someone who would not return but who still lived there. In the flowers, in the pages, and in the silence. If you've made it this far, it's because this story touched you in some way. So comment below. I felt her. Silence. Only those who understand will comment on this. Take advantage now, leave a like. It helps this video reach more people who need to feel this same truth. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories that move you from the inside, not the outside. And now, without leaving here, click on the video that's appearing on the screen. The next story will give you even more chills. Go there. I'll meet you there.